In motion is Sewell. Goff to throw. Wants to throw it to Sewell. He caught it! Bryce Sewell with a first down! Oh, yes. The big man dives down to the 31-yard line! Oh, that is beautiful!
Merry Christmas here from Allen Park, and welcome to Week 16 of the Twentyman the Huddle podcast presented by Microsoft. And as always, we're going to start with news and notes as the Lions head to Carolina on Saturday, not Sunday, Christmas Eve game this week, to face a Carolina team that, look, it's 5-9 is still in the hunt in the NFC South, so they've got plenty to play for. And obviously Detroit, after the 1-6 start, battling back to 6-1 over the last 7 games to 7-7 on the year, still very much in the thickest things in the NFC. So, look, it's going to be an exciting game, and it's going to be a cold game, too. We're going to have Darrin Gantt on, does a great job covering the Panthers. He's going to explain that a little bit, but it could be a record cold game for Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte. So, elements are going to play a factor on Saturday. I think we should probably start this week with the Pro Bowl. Congratulations to Frank Ragnow of the Detroit Lions for, making his second Pro Bowl, made it in 2020. Obviously only played 4 games last year, was injured, and to make it now for a second year, I think Frank's established himself as one of the consistently dominant centers in football. Congratulations to him. The only guy who made the initial team, Penei Sewell, Amon-Ra St. Brown first, alternates, in all 9 alternates for this Detroit Lions team. So you can just see where this roster is heading, right? A lot of young guys, getting into the alternate list there. So this is a roster and a team that's trajecting forward with a lot of young guys. Health-wise, it's pretty good heading into this game for Detroit. Monitoring Frank a little bit as he continues to deal with that foot injury. But look, he's battled that since week 1. He's played 13 games this season, so I don't think that'll be an issue. Probably the one big loss, they're likely not to have Deshaun Elliott, the starting safety. Injured his shoulder in the third quarter last week against the Jets, did not return. It's going to be Ifeatu Melifonwu and C.J. Moore battling out this week for that starting job. We talked to Aaron Glenn on Tuesday it was, and he said, look, that competition is still very much in play. I think that's going to go down to the end of the week. I'd be a little surprised if it wasn't C.J. Moore to start, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see Ifeatu and C.J. Moore at different points in the game. Dominant performance up front by that offensive line against the Jets. They hope to continue that this week against Carolina. It's now 10 quarters. The Lions have not allowed a sack. 19 sacks all season long. That's tied with Dallas and Tampa Bay for the fewest in the NFL. Those guys just continue to oppose their will on opposing defenses, and they've been really good. They'll look to do that again against a Carolina team that's not quite as good defensively as the New York Jets, so you hope that will play into Detroit's favor. Good for Khalif Raymond for winning the NFC Special Teams Player of the Week after his 47-yard punt return. Dan Campbell, after that game, gave Khalif a game ball, called him one of those Iron Men. A guy who's been at every practice, every game. When the Lions were injured at wide receiver, he was a guy that stepped in and played, and obviously to get his first punt return touchdown. He's second in the NFL right now in terms of punt return average, so well-deserved for him. And I think when you look at this matchup with Carolina this week, I think you know exactly what you're going to get in Carolina. Like I mentioned off the top, it's a team still fighting for a playoff spot, but offensively, they want to run the football, and that's what they do. You look at their 5 wins this year, they've averaged 191 yards rushing the football. In their 9 losses, they've averaged 76. And look, they'll run it on 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5. They'll run it some more, and then they're going to run it again. And so you know what you're going to get with them. They try to impose their will. They've got an identity. They want to run the football, and then Sam Darnold had the play action off that with some of those strike routes and play actions, and they'll take a couple shots that we saw last week in their game. So, but I think the big key for Detroit is really first and foremost stopping that run, make them a throwing football team, and I think that plays to Detroit's advantage. So got a great show for you this week. Darrin Gantt, like I mentioned, from Panthers.com is going to break down this matchup. Taylor Decker is going to join me. We're going to talk offense offensive line and everything else. I've got the BetMGM key matchups with PJ Clark. So busy show as the Detroit Lions get ready to head down to Carolina. Huge Week 16 matchup this week against the Panthers, two teams still fighting for the playoffs. Welcome back to the Twentyman the Huddle podcast presented by Microsoft, and I am very glad to be joined by Darrin Gantt. He's the senior writer, managing editor, does a great job covering everything Carolina Panthers for Panthers.com. Darrin, thanks for joining me. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, happy to do it, Tim.
You know, it's cold here. We're gonna get some snow here on Friday. 3 to 5 inches projected, but it's gonna be cold in Carolina. You guys aren't used to this, are you? I know we were chatting before. What's the crazy stat for Saturday's game?
Yes, welcome to the South in December, where we are not prepared for cold weather and we do not enjoy it. We live here for a reason. Thank you very much. This has the potential to be the coldest home game in Carolina Panthers franchise history, with a forecast temperature somewhere hovering around 30 at kickoff, we think. The high on Saturday is projected to be about 34. Don't know if we're going to get all the way there, but 30 degrees is the coldest home game in Panthers franchise history, which is your reminder that everything is relative.
Yes, you are speaking from someone up north in Detroit. Now, obviously, we're used to the cold, but the Lions do play in Ford Field, which is a stadium and enclosed. So 70 degrees on game day, but we do go to Green Bay every year, so we know about cold weather games. But how do you think the cold maybe affects this game, Darrin?
Well, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I'm sure people are going to start dredging up the Jared Goff cold weather game stats is going to be one thing, and I'm sure he's already been through a layer of that this year. But I think that the way the Carolina Panthers are playing football right now, they've kind of taken the elements out of play. I mean, when it's been raining, when they played in the drizzly mess up in Seattle the other week, they're kind of built to play that way because, listen, this team wants to run first and foremost. They want to play defense. They want to shorten games. So the idea of throwing the ball all over the yard is not really anything they're particularly interested in, I guess you'd say. So they're sort of weatherproof. They're just not, and every team's got guys on it that aren't from the place they are. There are Florida guys here who would rather be someplace even warmer. But, I think they're kind of built in a way that I don't know that the conditions are going to matter as much to them as it might somebody else.
I'm glad you brought that up, Darrin, because I was looking on your website. You guys had a very interesting statistic that over the last 6 weeks, and you guys are a team that wants to run the football. I mean, you're right there in the middle of the league in terms of rushing statistically throughout the course of the year. But in your last 3 losses, you guys have averaged 40.3 yards rushing per game. In your 3 wins, 213. I mean, Darrin, that's a significant difference, and obviously coming off a game last week, the loss to Pittsburgh, where you guys rushed for a season low 21 yards. I mean, is that really the Carolina Panthers go offensively with how that run game goes? Is it as easy as that?
Almost, yeah. I mean, and whether it was Baker Mayfield, and again, you almost have to divide it into a couple of different segments, because during the Matt Rule, Christian McCaffrey portion of the season, and again, you wouldn't think your running game gets better when you trade away Christian McCaffrey, but that's what's happened. And that's no slight to Christian. He's a fantastic player. 49ers are a Super Bowl favorite. They're probably, in my opinion, the team nobody wants to see in January. But since he's gone, it's become a more straightforward running game. D'Onta Foreman is not a shake guy. He is not a sizzle guy. He's popped a couple of big runs, but he is not get it outside. They are an up the middle power running team, and it's built on an offensive line that they spent a lot of money and draft picks on this offseason trying to fix. They go out and sign Bradley Bozeman and Austin Corbett free agency, use their first round pick on left tackle Ike Ekwonu. That was intentional, and because they know they wanted, no matter who the coach was, even when Christian was still here, they knew they needed to fix that part of it. So they went out and got those guys. And the thing that's happened a couple of times, you mentioned those 3 losses, Cincinnati, Baltimore, Pittsburgh. The Cincinnati game was one of those that you've seen over the years. A team has one of those every year that just gets away from them and gets off the rails early and doesn't come back. that one was that game. But since Pittsburgh and Baltimore both, I mean, 3-4 defenses that kind of get after you, play old school football too. So it was some struggles in both those games, just trying to get anything established. But otherwise, they've been able to lean on people. They've been able to stay on the front foot. They've been able to find holes for Foreman and Chuba Hubbard, and even the kid named Raheem Blackshear, who has contributed a little to the running game. So, it's not sexy. It's not flashy. I feel like Dan Campbell probably respects it because it's very old school and physical and, cold weather type football.
I'm sure Dan will respect that. I mean, he always preaches, right? Grit, toughness, offensive line. That's what he wants this offense in Detroit to be predicated on, too. And look, when they're a successful offense, now obviously Jared Goff is playing really well and they have some weapons on the outside. But when this team is humming offensively, it's through that offensive line and it's through that run game. So very, similar styles of offense, certainly with Carolina and Detroit on Saturday. But let's talk about Sam Darnold a little bit. He's going to get the start. Steve Wilks said on Monday, look, you look at his statistics, they don't wow you, obviously, because of what you talked about and just the style they want to play. But look, he hasn't turned the football over. You guys are 2-1 with him as a starter. Just maybe evaluate his play and what he needs to do on Saturday for you guys to come away with a win.
Yeah, the only real important stat with Sam right now is 0 number of turnovers since he's been back in the lineup. Now, Sam even caught a break here a couple weeks ago when the ball came loose on an exchange, and he actually grabbed it and rolled his way into the end zone. So even when things didn't go well, they worked out for him for the most part. But they've really lowered the bar on any of the quarterbacks. If you go back to Steve Wilks' first game as interim coach out in L.A., P.J. Walker was starting, and they barely threw anything farther than about 5 yards downfield. Steve wants to reduce mistakes and reduce the opportunity for calamity. And that's kind of the way they're game planning it. Sam's played all right. And fine. And it sounds like a backhanded compliment, but what they really want Sam to do is take care of the ball. Now, they think there's some more shots. He hit a couple the other day against Pittsburgh when they were trying to get back in that thing. And he's got the kind of arm to get downfield. He's got some mobility. There was a point last year when they actually got off to a 3-0 start. Sam led the league in touchdown runs. He had like 5 rushing touchdowns in the first 3 or 4 weeks, something like that. But Sam can be mobile. He can do some things, but really it's just a matter of keeping the expectations low and not asking him to do too much. That's just not who they want to be.
And I know Steve Wilks talked about it earlier in the week, too, about encouraging Sam to use his legs a little bit more, too. And look, the Lions have struggled defensively against some mobile quarterbacks this season. So, maybe something that if there's an opportunity there, Sam could certainly look to extend a play or make a play with his legs. Darrin, let's switch over to the other side of the ball. I'm talking with Darrin Gantt, does a terrific job covering the Carolina Panthers for Panthers.com. Defensively, it's a pretty good football team. I mean, you got a couple guys in Brian Burns and AC Horn especially that jump out on tape and some of the numbers that they've put up this season. That really one of the strengths of this football team, and what's the test for that defense this week, and what's the point of emphasis facing a Detroit Lions team that's pretty explosive at really all different levels offensively.
Yeah, Jaycee is a guy he's that guy. He's one of those corners who you can just turn loose on somebody and kind of take him out of the game. DK Metcalf wasn't really a factor the other day in Seattle, and it was as simple as, Jaycee, you got him. Take care of that one. The problem has been when other people start getting involved in the passing game. They were able to hit some plays to lock it up in Seattle. On the other side, obviously, it was a struggle when C.J. Henderson went out injured last week. They had Keith Taylor, a second-year, 5th-round pick, who's had some moments, but really, the Steelers were kind of picking on him. They were looking up at the line of scrimmage and finding him and going his way. Jaycee's got that ability to kind of take away half the field, but they're going to have to run some different guys in. I think CJ's health is going to be one of the big storylines of this week down here, just to see how he is. He's a guy who, while not Jaycee Horn, is very talented and has played more consistently, probably the second half of the year rather than the first half of the year, but just all the talent in the world. And, they're also out there with a guy in Dante Jackson, who they spent some money on this offseason, keeping him as a free agent, sitting on IR. So they've been struggling to keep enough corners on the field for a team that was pretty deep at that spot to begin with.
And a 5-9 football team, you don't always think of a team in mid-December that's in the mix, that's playing meaningful football in the month of December. But that's where Carolina finds himself, just because of where the NFC South finds itself. And what's the risk of? I know you guys have Tampa Bay next week. Just because you guys really do control your own destiny, you have to take care of your own business. There's no looking past Detroit to Tampa Bay, is there this week, Darrin?
No, there's not, and especially not after the Steelers kind of beat their heads in the other day, because Wilks has been very clear. I mean, he's talked about playoff mentality, and they had to approach the last 6 weeks of the season as a series of playoff games. Obviously last week didn't go so well, but he said the other day, we can't talk about playoffs because we've got to get all of that stuff fixed. And you got to do it against a really good Detroit team before you can even worry about what you're going to do in Tampa in a couple of weeks on New Year's Day. So it's from that standpoint, I think it was you never like having those big, kind of deflating defeats. But earlier this year, when they go up to Cincinnati and get rolled, they come back short week on Thursday night against Atlanta and probably played one of their more complete games of the year that night. They're hoping short week, and that kind of loss kind of brings them in focus, but they were going to be focused this week anyway. I mean, when you look at what they're playing against, and, I think you guys have probably heard it. People still talk about Detroit as if it was the team that started 1-6. And now this is one of the hottest teams in the league, and they're pretty aware of that.
Yeah, it's just fun to be covering meaningful games in December, isn't it? I know we've been through some hard times here the last few years. It's such a big difference, isn't it, Darrin?
We've talked about that a lot here, and Wilks has kind of brought back that feeling because he was on staffs here with Ron Rivera when they went 7-8-1 and won the division by winning 4 straight. Start 3-8-1 and win a division, go to the playoffs. Make no apologies for it. They won a playoff game that year. So it's been a while. It's been since 2017. Since they've played meaningful games in December in this building. And, obviously the Pittsburgh game didn't go the way they wanted to. So we'll see how it goes on Christmas Eve against our close personal friends, the Lions.
All right, last one for you, Darrin. The Carolina Panthers win on Saturday, and they keep right on the heels of Tampa Bay heading into a big matchup between those two teams Week 17 if what happens at Bank of America Stadium on Saturday.
Yeah, I think they've got to turn Jared Goff over a time or two. I think they've got to get the ball away defensively because, again, they've lowered the bar on what offense needs to be. And if the run defense or if the run game can't get going the way they struggled against Pittsburgh the other day, if they don't get that part of the game going, I think they're going to have to create a turnover. And, I mean, Jared hadn't done it in a while. I think it's been
6 games.
6 games without an interception for him. So, again, they'll be hoping that cold weather is a factor for him. They'll be hoping for some of that other stuff. But honestly, I think they're going to need a break. I mean, they're going to have to get a turnover. They're going to have to make a play on special teams, something like that, because where they are offensively right now, they're not dynamic enough to fairly expect to get into a game where they have to score 24, 27, 30 points a game and try to win it. That's just not how they're built right now.
Well, it should be a fun one, Darrin. It's going to be cold. It should be physical.
Bring your mittens.
We're used to that in Detroit. They're a staple in the old suitcase, but it should be a fun one. Obviously, it's a huge game for both teams. It's fun to be covering meaningful football in the month of December. Great stuff, Darrin. Appreciate you, and I'll make sure I come and say hello on Saturday.
Sounds good. What a time to be alive, Tim.
Thanks, Darrin. We'll see you on Saturday.
Hey, bud.
Welcome back to the Twentyman Huddle podcast presented by Microsoft, and I am now joined by starting left tackle Taylor Decker. And Taylor, we were talking about this on the way up. I had you on kind of a few weeks ago, right when you guys started your win streak, and I wanted to have you on again because things are a lot different now. And you being the most senior member of this team and having been through kind of this run early in your career in 16 and 17, how does this maybe differ? This run, playing meaningful games in December, differ than in 16 and 17 when you guys were kind of going through the same thing?
I mean, I would say the primary difference would be that it's like how we're winning games. What is our approach to how we're going to win games? How are we going to take advantage of these defenses where, especially in 16, like we were winning almost every game on a 2-minute drive at the end of the game.
Come from behind stuff.
Yeah. And then like the obvious thing would be is like there's nobody here that was there then. Like there's nobody. There's no staff. Like there's no players. Like
Right.
There's nobody.
Yeah.
So it's completely different, and that just gives a different locker room feel. And you know, it's completely different, honestly.
Complementary football. That's what people talk about all the time, right?
Yeah.
And it seems like that's the biggest difference from the outside looking in with me. Just you guys have won games with your defense on the field at the end of the games. You guys offensively have grinded a 6-minute drive to take the clock down. And in the case of last week, and Minnesota made the plays offensively to win the game. Special teams. You've had 2 special teams players of the week with Badgley making field goals and then Khalif turning. It just seems like it's got to be really fun, right? Because it seems like everybody has a hand in what's going on right now. Yeah,
and I think that's good football. Like, you know, there's going to be games where maybe like last week against the Jets, the offense, we have a tough matchup. That defense is phenomenal. Like, they're a very good defense. So we were going to need our defense to step up and make some plays, or we're going to need the special teams to get a touchdown or whatever it may be. And just being able to know that other phase has your back is just huge. And then I'd say the biggest difference, one of the bigger differences also would be that we're not putting ourselves in a position to have a 2-minute drive to win the game sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, we're ahead and we're able to just control the clock.
It's a 6-minute drive to grind it, run the football,
exactly,
impose your will on somebody, and just win the game. And that's got to be fun as an offensive lineman too, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's nothing harder than 2-minute. There's nothing harder than 2-minute, and when you have a 4-minute and it's successful, I mean, that just takes all the steam out of the other team.
You know, you said a few weeks ago that, and you were very vocal about this not being, you know, the same old Lions team, and you know, you took some criticism then about some maybe unbelievers, but how rewarding is it now that there's probably pretty much 99% of Lions fans in the Detroit population that agrees with you 100% after watching the last 7 weeks? I mean, you saw this coming right when it started to turn. How rewarding is it that you know, this team has bonded together and kind of lived up to what you guys talked about, this not being what Lions fans were used to?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I just seen it. I just seen how close we are, and I had seen a clip the other day after the first Minnesota game, and I had said we are really, really close to being a really good team.
Yeah,
and we just got to make the plays at the end of the game, and I've seen the confidence build and some young players, and then in different position groups, the coaches, you know, have obviously tried to put the players in a position to succeed even more so.
Yeah.
And I just felt like it was just a matter of time before we got this thing rolling, because we've been close in a lot of games, and half of them haven't gone our way, and then more recently we've been able to make those plays at the end of the game, and you know, just to see the work we put in, and then feel the belief, because you can't fake belief, you can't fake trust.
It's different in this building. It just feels different, you know, from someone who's in the building every day, not obviously in the locker room, but it just feels different around walking around. There's a different vibe, a different culture, a different attitude. And credit Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes for you know, turning it into that. And
I mean, just you look at games like last week, we used to lose those games 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah. Early in the year, you might have lost that game.
And yeah, exactly. Early in the, we used to lose those games.
Yeah.
And we didn't. And I think that was a really good game for us and a really good win for us to kind of squeak one out.
Yeah.
You know,
when you don't play your best football too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you guys were 0-3 in the red zone, uncharacteristic of you guys offensively. Just didn't play your best game, but on the road against a good team, against a top defense, found a way to win.
Yeah, and I think that's huge because, you know, we've had some games recently where at the end we didn't have to make those plays because we played well for, you know, up until that point, and we were ahead and in control of the game. But to have a game like that where it's like we got to make these plays at the end of the game to win this, and we haven't played our best ball, and to still win, I mean, that's just another step in our growth as a team, and to be able to mature as a team. So I think it was great for us.
What about getting
plays from guys like Khalif Raymond to win a game, getting a play like from Brock Wright to win a game like that too. So obviously you expect it from the Charks and the Swifts and those guys of the world, right? They make big plays all the time, Goff. But for Khalif Raymond to return a punt and be a big part of that. Brock Wright in the last 2 minutes have a 51-yard touchdown. It's not only finding a way to win a game when you don't play your best, but getting it from a lot of different players. That's got to give that whole team confidence too, that anybody can step in and make a play.
Yeah, and that's a testament to those guys every single day doing what they're supposed to do and being in the right spot, knowing what to do. Because like Brock and Leaf are professionals, man. They're like pros, and they go about it like that. And you may not see them make the big splash play every single Sunday, but that doesn't mean they can't, and that doesn't mean they don't know how to.
Yeah.
And Brock was faster than I thought too.
Jared said that too. Jared said we knew he was fast, but even me watching it from the press box, I was like, he can scoot a little bit. That straight line, we got to go check the 40 time at the combine there.
Yeah.
Robert Saleh, leading into that game, was talking about the offensive line, was talking about everything starts with Detroit up front. And I think everybody knows that, just the way that you guys are playing right now.
Yeah.
He said there's Philadelphia Eagles and there's the Detroit Lions in terms of the elite offensive lines in this league. When you hear that from a guy like that, who's obviously made his mark playing defense in this league or coordinating defense in this league, what does that mean to you, that you guys are now considered that elite status at your position group?
First off, I would say it's a huge compliment from him, especially because I see him as a front seven defensive guy, especially.
Yeah.
We want this defense to penetrate, get up the field. We want our linebackers to be able to run. So he obviously watches a lot of offensive line, so that's a huge compliment coming from him. And then on top of that, I think him saying that, he was going to try and heat us up. They were going to bring all sorts of pressures.
Yeah.
There was going to be safeties in the run game, and they were. And they were making plays. I mean, their safeties were basically playing linebacker, it felt like. So it was a great challenge for us. And I would say, while it's an awesome compliment, this is a what have you done for me lately league. So if we go out and we lay an egg and we don't play well against Carolina, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and that's an interesting team too, because you look at them, their strength is probably defense. Brian Burns, you're probably going to see him. Penny's going to see him. I know they move him around. Just the type of player he is, leads them in sacks, leads them in tackles for loss.
Yeah.
Looks like he's got a pretty good toolbox of pass rush moves. That's a nice little spin move. Just a challenge this week with Brian.
Yeah, he's top notch.
Yeah,
he is top notch, and he's got some of that rare burst and speed. He's one of those naturally slippery, bendy guys that can hit a hand move, but also bend the edge if he doesn't catch your hands clean. And then, given his success that he's had, you can tell he's a confident player. He's out there playing confident and disruptive. All
right, I want to just switch gears a little bit too. You annually are one of the top 5 to top 10 tackles in the NFL, and the recognition hasn't always been there for you for whatever reason, probably mostly because the team hasn't won, right? You know how this Pro Bowl stuff kind of goes.
Yeah.
If you don't win, you're probably not going to get on, but you got into the top 5 in the fan vote, and you were named an alternate to the Pro Bowl, so there's some recognition there.
I didn't even know that.
So just what does that mean?
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that, yes.
No, I did.
Yes.
I knew that I got a bunch of fan votes there at the 11th hour, but I did
the
not.
fellow players and the fellow coaches voted as well, and you were named an alternate to the Pro Bowl. So I'm just curious because of it, it seems like you're one of those guys every single year to finally now get the recognition. This line's getting the recognition. Just how does that feel to finally kind of be among those guys that are getting recognized as the elite tackles in this league?
Man, it's humbling, and it's cool. I mean, as an O lineman, like, our stats are team stats, so I know a lot of that recognition is going to come along with team stats. But just to see how the fans turned out there late, I mean, I know I think I said it to Justin Rogers that it was something that it eats at me.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's pretty cool, man. I don't got much to say because I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So.
No. Well, I'm glad.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It is. And Frank, obviously, you got in on the team. Just what Frank has meant, his second Pro Bowl, and just what the steadying force he is in the center there.
If there's one guy on the team that deserves to go, I would pick Frank.
Yeah.
As an offensive line, if you look like which positions typically are kind of seen the most, it would probably be the tackles. Frank at that center position is dominant. He is elite. And I would say on top of that, some of the stuff he's battling through this year, people don't know the extent of it.
Yeah.
I mean, he's hurting, and not many guys would be even playing anymore. I don't think that. So just that mental aspect of his toughness on top of what he's able to physically do, on top of him being in there, makes everybody around him better just because of his understanding of the game. I mean, the guy's incredible.
Yeah.
Like, he's one of my best friends, and he deserves every bit of recognition he gets. Like, he's incredible.
Well, you guys pretty much control your own destiny here. Start Saturday in Carolina. Take care of business there. Keep this thing rolling. And boy, can you even imagine, Taylor, what it's going to be like in Ford Field, Chicago, Week 17, if you guys are 8-7 with a chance to keep this thing rolling and potentially make the playoffs with that game. Have you you guys don't let yourself look ahead, obviously. But you've been with this team a long time. That's going to be a crazy environment, right?
I don't think I know what to expect because every week recently, especially,
it's been crazy in there.
It's been more rowdy and more rowdy every single week, and like we're going out there for warm-ups an hour before the game, and it's like, man, the stadium's almost like full already. Like, it is an incredible atmosphere, and you know, when the Lions are winning, that's got to be one of the best atmospheres in the NFL.
100%.
It's got to be. Like, our atmosphere on game day is just incredible, and the fans are losing their minds and having a good time, and I mean, it's awesome. Fans drive our game. I've said it a bunch of times. Like, we don't get to play, and we don't get to make the living that we do, and be on TV if it's not for the fans, if 100%. It's not for the people. I've said this before. Like, we're a blue collar city, and there's people who are doing hard work, manual labor, working 2-3 jobs, whatever it may be, and they choose to spend their money to buy tickets to come see us or wear our jerseys, and it's incredible. And I said it after last game, like they deserve a winner. This city deserves a winner.
Well, make sure you guys go win in Carolina on Saturday. Make sure that's a crazy environment in a couple weeks. Keeps it rolling. You're playing some good ball. You guys are playing some good ball offensively. Let's finish this thing out strong.
Appreciate that.
All right. Thanks, Taylor.
Thanks.
Welcome back to the Twentyman the Huddle podcast. This is now the key matchups segment presented by BetMGM.
We're back.
And
we're rolling.
Yes, PJ Clark is joining me,
Returned.
Producer extraordinaire, football analysis extraordinaire.
Okay.
You've got.
We'll take it. It's the giving season.
It
You're
is.
giving
It's
me a
Christmas.
lot of credit here.
It's close here. You are a big part of the podcast, and so obviously you know the drill. It's 5 key matchups in this one, and let's start right up front. I mean, I think this is a game that's going to be won in the trenches.
Yep.
I think these teams are built very similarly. They want to play physical football. It starts up front along the offensive defensive lines. They want to run the football first on offense. Detroit's obviously a little more explosive at quarterback and wide receiver, but that's kind of where it starts. And I think a key matchup in this one is their talented edge rusher Brian Burns versus, we'll put Penei Sewell on the graphic here, but they move him both sides. I think Taylor Decker's gonna see him on the left side too. And I just think that's a key matchup. When you look at Burns, he leads them in sacks with 10.5, but he also leads them in tackles for loss. He's their most explosive player up front. He's the guy up front that can wreck a game for them.
There's a reason why teams were calling Carolina after McCaffrey got traded and offering 2 first-round picks for that guy, because he is as good. 10.5 sacks this year. He's got a full sack in 8 of 14 games. He had a half sack in a ninth. 2 sacks versus the Lions in 2020, so this is a team that has played him before, but one of the premier young edge rushers in the league. And on the graphic here, you got Sewell, one of the premier young tackles in the league. Only 2 sacks allowed this year. This is a big matchup, and Carolina is a team that has invested a lot of draft picks into the defense, specifically that front. They took Derek Brown the year after they took Brian Burns, but Burns has really blossomed into a superstar here in year 4.
But this is a Detroit Lions team that's put a lot of resources into their offensive line.
Yes, sir, they have.
Sewell, a first-round pick, Ragnow, first-round pick.
Decker, a first-round pick, Jonah Jackson, a third-round pick, the 5-year, $50 million for Big V. Obviously, Evan Brown's filling in while Big V's on IR, but that's really been the strength of this team. And when you look at this offensive line, what is it, 10 quarters now I think they've gone without a sack. You mentioned, Penny, only 2. The interior guys haven't allowed one yet. All 3 guys, Brown, Ragnow, and Jackson. And I just think this is a big matchup because, we talked to Carolina a beat writer, ahead of this, Darrin Gantt, and he said the key to him in this game, Detroit's a more talented football team, but they're going to need to turn the football over. They're going to need the Lions to turn the football over. They're going to need to generate some takeaways. And I think one of the guys, that can do that, obviously Jaycee Horn is one, but I think Brian Burns is one too with that strip sack. He's got a terrific spin move if you watch some of the highlights. And so, I think, making sure Jared's clean, playing the kind of football that you've been playing if you're the Detroit Lions over the last 7 weeks, especially up front, I think is important in this game.
And just keep it methodical. I mean, you won an ugly game on the road in a cold environment. It's going to be a similar thing. I mean, you just got to, if you can get the run game going a little bit more, it's been kind of down the last couple of weeks, but Swift had 6.5 for a carry against the Jets. I mean, that's a good number. That's where you want to be. Maybe get Jamal back in the end zone for the first time in a while here and get back on the board.
Probably should have been in the end zone. That holding call on Evan Brown was a little iffy.
It happens.
It happens. All right, well, let's go, on the outside. And look, they don't have a ton of weapons outside. Like we said, they want to run the football with Deontay Foreman. But DJ Moore is more than capable at wide receiver. And look, they'll throw him in the backfield and they'll run him too. He's a lot like St. Brown in that sense that they'll kind of move him all over the place and use him in a lot of different spots. And obviously, it'll be a big matchup with Jeff Okudah. The Jets, I thought, really kind of went after Jeff a little bit last week. 14 pass attempts his way. Now, they only completed 6 of them, 42.9%, but did hit a couple big plays, 125 yards. So, I think Jeff will take those percentages, wants to limit the big plays. There are a couple there, I think, he probably thinks he should have had a little better ball skills. And look, Sam Darnold will take a shot or two. We saw it last week in their loss to Pittsburgh. They probably should have connected on 2, shots down the field. They weren't to DJ Moore, but DJ Moore is their big play guy. And so, look, he's got 51 receptions on the year, but 97 targets, which shows you their struggle at the quarterback position a little bit. 678 yards, 5 touchdowns, leads them. He's their most gifted offensive player.
He's their most gifted offensive player now. 97 targets. The next highest is McCaffrey at 43.
I don't think he plays there anymore.
He's been gone for a while. So that kind of just shows you it's the DJ Moore show. Then Terrace Marshall is in second now, but 7 games with over 30% target share. So he is really the guy you got to key in on. As you mentioned, Jeff, a rough start to the Jets game. I thought he battled back. You mentioned the ball skills. Still had 2 pass breakups in that game. So not his best yardage, but you'll take the 6 for 14 completion.
And I think the secondary as whole is probably looking for a bounce back game here.
A lot of big plays last week.
A ton of big plays. 50, 40, 33, 33, 22, 21, 20. I think that were the big plays. And, a few balls that kind of fluttered up in the air. I thought Zach Wilson kind of threw it up for grabs, and looking at the film, those guys probably, think they could have had maybe 3-4 picks in that game. So I'll be looking for Jeff and those guys to have a definite bounce back game, and they'll have to be really good against DJ Moore. Let's go back up front and let's talk about their rookie tackle Akeem Ikwonu versus a guy that just keeps getting sacks.
He's in the backfield.
That's all he does. Now,
week.
The Jets probably would have wanted to block him. His sack last week was an unblocked sack, probably a miscommunication there. But hey, a sack's a sack, and he'll take it. Look, he's got 3. He's the 3rd player in NFL history to have a sack, at least 1 sack in his first 4 games. He's got 5 on the year. That's second among NFL rookies, behind only teammate Aiden Hutchinson. He just keeps it rolling.
He just keeps rolling, and he's winning multiple ways now. So he still does that little hesitation move that you saw against Buffalo where he got the big first sack, but he's dipping around these tackles. He's going wide. He can stay inside. He's just, he's got a knack for it. He gets into the backfield every week. He's coming up. He doesn't miss sacks. When he's there, he will hit the quarterback. He goes low, which is a good way to win when you have that bend. You don't have to come all the way back up.
it's elite bend. Too.
It's elite bend, and it's some crazy stuff. The one that he hit Wilson in the fourth quarter on that last possession of the game, that was low. That was just turning around the corner and getting there and forcing an incompletion on that. But then Ikem Ekwonu, you're looking at that, a top flight tackle in this year's draft, but he's tied for 4th in penalties amongst offensive linemen this year. He's got 9 on the year. That's something that the Lions, especially, you saw how offensive line penalties can impact you negatively last week. This is a guy that has done it an awful lot.
And it's been a weird season for Ekwonu because you look at the start, right? He allowed 3 sacks in his first 2 games. Rough start, as you expect with rookies. But then he went a stretch of 10 games right there from week 3 through whatever it was, 11, 12, where he did not allow a sack, was playing much better football, and now has allowed 1 in each of the last 2 weeks. Now, obviously, last week against Pittsburgh and that defense, that's a tough task. But I think this is an opportunity for James Houston, Aiden Hutchinson, Josh Pascal, Romeo Okwara, who had a couple last week, who's definitely playing much better, and then obviously James Houston on the graphic there. So it'll be, I think there's an opportunity for those guys on the edge to impact the game in a big way on Saturday.
Specifically with Ekwonu and Houston, I mean, that's athlete on athlete.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see, this is a big tackle that can move. How is he going to combat that bend and that move that Houston has just broken out in 4 straight games now? That I think that's going to be a really fun one to watch.
All right, let's talk about another one. I think this might be their best defensive player is cornerback Jaycee Horn and versus DJ Chark. Now, I think Jaycee's going to probably see a variety of different guys, but we put DJ Chark on here because Chark 1 catch for 18 yards last week. Didn't get really involved. Faced a really good corner.
I think that was
Sauce
intentional.
Gardner.
Yeah.
But you look at Jaycee Horn. I put him in that same category with Sauce. I mean, you just look at the numbers. He's got 3 picks on the year. When you throw at Jaycee Horn, 54.8 completion percentage, has not allowed a touchdown. Opponents have a 39.4 rating. That was better than Sauce Gardner's numbers coming in. We talked last week about how good of a matchup that was. And so, look, this guy, he basically shuts down half the field for them. They basically say, okay, JC, you take this half, and then we'll just worry about all the rest. Now, teams are attacking the other side a lot, but boy, you're such a better defense when you have a cornerback that you just trust to take away one half the field.
And I mean, this is literally my one note is just this is Sauce 2.0, which I guess is good for the Lions because you figured out how to win by just ignoring half of the field, and you got the win and you got there. It wasn't pretty all the time, but it happened. So let's run that back, do it again.
And I know they want to take care of the football, and that's been one of the big recipes for winning football with Jared over the last six wins. But I think I'd like to see it maybe 1 or 2 more shots.
Yeah,
I think
because you had the one to JMO.
The one to JMO. It was open, just underthrew it. You wish he would have thrown it a little bit earlier, but I thought there were some opportunities maybe to take some shots, give guys like Chark a chance for a 50-50 ball. There's a fine line there. You want to be careful not turn it over because that's why you're winning. But I think you've when they've been at their best offensively, they've protected Jared, they've run the football, and they've gotten explosive plays
and
down
play action.
The field.
I mean, I think that's really where you're going to rely on, if you're Carolina, a star corner like Jaycee Horn. I mean, this is a big guy. He's physical. He's handsy. He likes to tackle. I mean, this is a big hitter. He really is incredibly similar to Sauce
JMO
Gardner.
and I give DJ Chark a chance, at least one chance down the field against that guy. If it's one-on-one, let's see if my guy can make a play.
And even if it's not against Jaycee Horn, I mean, C.J. Henderson was a top 10 pick in 2020, but he's been banged up. He hasn't been great this year when he's been on the field. So it's just all right. Josh Reynolds, you're out for this play because it's 8-on-8 on the left side, and let's see what JMO can do against C.J. Henderson on the other.
Well, let's finish it with this one. Is Sam Darnold, their quarterback, obviously is been through some tough times here through the beginning of his career. Better than most, being a Jets fan, growing up in New York, and against Jared Goff. And I think obviously the most important position in football, right? It's quarterback position. And you just look at Goff, that 6 straight starts, the only quarterback in the league with 6 straight starts without a turnover, and that's really been, I think, one of the big catalysts behind the 6-1 stretch here.
Yeah, and it's partially on Goff hitting the open receiver and not risking it too much, like he was a little bit maybe pressing early on in the season, but it's also on the offensive line. You're not letting
100%.
anybody touch him. There's no strip sack. There's no chaos in the backfield there. But I mean, Sam's got 3 games with no turnovers as well this year. So that's something to keep an eye on.
And that's
sure.
why I put this one up there, because I think that's huge. Sam Darnold's 2-1 on the year. He's completing less than 60% of the passes. It's a lot of short game.
And they're not letting him throw. It was 19, 24, and 23.
Yeah.
They're not letting him throw the ball.
And it's been that same recipe.
Working.
You're like, don't make the mistake. And so I think that's why this graphic and this matchup to me is an important one, because I think whichever one of those guys maybe makes 1 or 2 mistakes, I think that's going to be huge in the outcome of this game, because they've both been pretty clean. They want to play a similar style, count on their defense, run the football, grind it out, physical. Which team can maybe force that big turnover, that strip sack, that jumper route, that whatever, and get a big turnover that makes a difference in the game. I think that's huge, and I think that's why both these guys have to play really, really well for the team.
And I think these are 2 guys that like the little underneath routes. I mean, you see Goff to Amon-Ra all the time, and just, put it in your receiver's hands, let him get yards after the catch kind of thing. But these are both guys that they can hit you downfield. If you're ignoring that and you're hedging towards up front in the intermediate area there, they can hit you downfield. I mean, certainly Sam can. And
Sam's got a strong arm.
We've seen it from Jared a couple times this year that both defenses have to be aware of what can happen downfield.
Well, Pete, it's going to be a big one. I think at 5 and 9, it's crazy.
It's crazy
to say that
teams.
this is still a playoff game. What are the Bucs 6 and 8?
Yep.
They got the Bucs the following week, but they can't look ahead because they've got to handle their business, make that a huge game. Detroit, obviously at 7 and 7, is very much in the hunt. It's going to be potentially a record cold game for
how about that
for
the Christmas
game
trip to
in
Carolina
Charlotte.
has certainly taken a hit.
That will play a factor, but look, huge game. I think 2 teams. Obviously, the Lions are a little bit more talented on both sides of the ball, but I think they want to play a similar style. So it should be an interesting game. Who gets off to a big start? Who makes that big play?
It's a road game too.
I think,
you gotta take that into account.
Yeah, I think Carolina's not built to come back. I think if Detroit can get off to a good start, get maybe a double-digit lead, I think that puts Carolina really behind the 8 ball. We will both be there. We will be chilly. Well, I won't. I'll be in the press box.
I will be chilly.
You'll be chilly down on the field.
I'll be layered. I'll be fine.
But we'll obviously have a breakdown after the game, as we always do. It was a good show. There's a lot of good stuff in this one. Obviously, big game for both, and hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you after the Carolina game.